Hello, all you wonderful fans of Courage, Confidence, Connections podcast. I'm Janice Debo. I am your host of the podcast, and I have a wonderful guest today, a friend of mine and a business associate, Mike Rule. He is CEO of CU Tech, as well as co-founder of Iron Fist. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming. I know how busy you are, and you're in outer space right now, so that tells us a lot. Right.
It's actually appropriate for a couple of our album covers. It's the same theme. So,
Let's give Iron Fist a big plug here. What I'd like to do first is just have you talk about Iron Fist because you started and then it
Mhm.
paused, and then give us a little background of Iron Fist because I want to help you guys get some serious promotion going here as well as your business.
Yep. So we started in 1982. My partner and I, the animal. He's the drummer. I'm the lead singer, lead guitar player. Although I wasn't back then, we didn't have a lead singer, lead guitar player, but we cut a lot of music. I say a lot. We cut some music back then, and we were working towards um, getting bigger. And life happened, and we kind of went separate ways for about 25 years. And in the early teens, not our teens, but the 20 teens, um, my daughter had actually, who's interesting, she's the bass player in the band now, but she was going to college. It was her freshman year, and she was a music major. And she was taking some classes, and he's a music professor at Central Michigan University. And so it just kind of naturally evolved that we were going to campus, we ran into him, and then it was just like we started this thing called Guys Camping, where seven of us from high school for, oh my God, 13, 14, 15, I don't know how many years it's been, 15 years, get together every year and go camping. And within the first, well, we played a couple of times just for fun. We actually wrote a song together. This was all before we decided to put it back together again. And the second year, I think it was, of camping, we had played the first year a little bit, and of course we brought the instruments because everybody takes a full band to go camping. And
Right.
um, we, uh, I was pulling into the campground and like rolling down my window before I was even out of the van, and we're both saying at the same time, "We've got to put the band back together again." And as we say, the rest has been history. So.
That is fantastic. And what a good story because not a lot of bands can walk away and come back after 25 years. Not a lot.
Well, yeah, there's a magic that has always been the kind of the joke, and it's not. I mean, it's true. You would think Scott, being a music professor, would have this great tone, pitch, and he doesn't. He can, and certainly as a backup singer for the band, he's gotten a lot better with it. But he's always been a little bit loosey goosey with tone, and so he would kind of. And he'll say this, he said it many times. I will badly kind of sing something to Mike, and he'll pick up the guitar and play it exactly as I'm thinking. Um, so that's kind of always been the way it's worked for us from way back when we were dumb kids to even till today. Um, we just have this ability to read each other and be able to write amazing music. We've released, you probably know better than I do, John, 60 songs in the last 12, 13 years, something like that. So
That's that is fantastic. And so so all of you listening, you're going to have all the links at the end and on the YouTube. And oh yeah, we're going to push this thing out there so you guys can jump on
appreciate it.
and buy his music. And I
Yeah,
won't
we got music. Maybe buy some.
buy some. Yeah, I won't ask you to sing today.
Thank
I
you.
didn't prep you for that. You don't have your good
That's
guitar.
okay. I just ate a super hot burrito, so my voice is probably not the best.
No worries. Okay. Well, give me a little bit of background on CU Tech because you've done a lot, and I know we can't even begin to go into everything that you have done and are doing. But CU Tech, you've been very helpful with me and my clients, that kind of thing with your business. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about how you even got into the IT industry, which is a crazy industry these days, and what's going on?
It was nothing I intended. So back, we started the company. CU was actually Consultations Unlimited. We started Consultations Unlimited in 2007, I think it was, because I had just come out of another thing that I was doing. We won't get into that. And I was doing a lot of really weird stuff. I was doing automotive restoration consulting. I was down in Branson, Missouri, doing some construction consulting, a couple on a resort down there. Specifically, I was doing carpet layouts. It was just all kinds of stuff. I was just doing all this weird. I was consulting on anything that people would pay me for. And I still do that to some degree. So I realized that I was doing enough of it. I needed to make the business legal. So when I was thinking through names, I thought, well, pretty much I do unlimited consulting. So we called it Consultations Unlimited. Uh, I was doing a little bit of IT work at that point, but my brother-in-law contacted me. He had a computer consulting business, and he also has a full-time job. And he contacted me. He says, "Why don't you like take this beast off my hands and run with it?" So I did. I ended up buying that business from him, and over a period of several years, and the IT part of it really started taking off, and the other stuff just kind of fell off because they didn't have time for it. So as we were going along, my then business partner, who was actually my sister-in-law, uh, we were like, Consultations Unlimited really doesn't convey a tech company. It doesn't really mean anything to people. So we decided to, when we made it an LLC, we went ahead and did the assumed name of CU Tech. The parent company is still Consultations Unlimited LLC, but we operate under CU Tech, so that's where it comes from. And we service businesses all over the U.S. Obviously, way out where you guys are on the West Coast. We have customers across the Midwest. Obviously, a lot. We're in Michigan, but we have a lot of customers in Michigan. And we do business consulting or business technology. So anything that a business needs, we provide. We take care of managed services, print services. If you want the one number for anything tech related, you want somebody to say, "I don't want to call Comcast and Spectrum and Microsoft," and we do all that for our customers, including some of them we manage their cell phones for them. So it's literally one phone call for all tech needs for a business.
That simplifies it for businesses. It really does. And
Yes.
you've had your fingers in a lot of different pies. What I like to talk to people about is, since the name of the podcast is Courage, Confidence, and Connections, that really describes my life. And it's not a nutshell, but it, I have seen that pattern in my life forever. And since the name came to me, let me ask you this. I consider you a very courageous man. I consider you somebody who's brazen. You're just, you just go for it. But I'd like to address the courage part of our podcast and say, Mike, what time in your life, areas in your life did you have to summon up courage? Because I think a lot of it comes naturally to you. I think you were probably born with a lot of courage. However, have you had to summon up that extra amount of courage to step into something and that didn't come easy?
I've always been a proponent of, well, I go back and forth on it. There's a part of me that if you want something done right, do it yourself. I kind of had an aha moment in the business early on because at the time I had 6 or 8 employees. And I remember being in our computer lab that we had where we did a lot of micro repair on computers. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, fixing everything. And I happened to look around, and I think there were 4 technicians in there watching me work. And I'm like, well, what am I paying these people for? And it wasn't that they weren't willing to, it was just that I just was like doing everything. So I've had to really learn to delegate and so forth, to let go of control and let other people, because I tend to be in my personality, I tend to be that charging to hell with a squirt gun, we're just gonna get it all taken care of kind of person.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had many conversations, and I can definitely see that for sure.
Yeah,
On a note, maybe even on a different note, letting go takes courage. I will definitely agree with that because you've got to trust people.
yeah.
And in that same on that same note, actually, is there another time in your life, like maybe when a child was born or something that was new and you didn't know anything about it. Do you have any times in your life? You don't have to be too personal if you're not comfortable with that, but I am curious about being courageous in maybe a different scenario where it was, you were green as it comes. Maybe even as a kid. I don't know.
I'd have to think about that, but I'll relay a story in the meantime while I'm thinking.
Okay.
Um, with a former business partner, we would go into these fairly high level meetings with some big companies to bid work, and um, it's just to me, it's like I may not know how to do this, but doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. And
Hmm.
so we took on a pretty good sized wealth management company. And they were asking me things. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Knowing full well, I have no idea how to do any of this stuff. And she's there with me. And we get in the car afterwards, and she says, "What are you doing? We don't know how to do all that. And if you say we'll figure it out one more time, I'm going to kill you."
Right.
Because she knew she's going to have to figure it out.
Gotcha.
Not really, not
Gotcha.
really. We did it together back in those days. But um, so that kind of comes natural to me. It's only been later that it's been more of a challenge, and that just comes from things that have happened in life. And with age, I'm at a point in life where I'm tired of figuring things out, and having to have courage and dive into things. I'm pushing 60 years old here. I would just like a little ease for a while. So it's one of those. Yeah, courage comes pretty natural to me, so I can't remember offhand. I can't remember anything except maybe I don't want to get into this too much, but I used to be a therapist and I was in South America teaching, and standing up and teaching for the first time when my mentor was sitting in the front row, that took some courage. Um, so that was in a little place in the slums of or in Sao Paulo, I believe at that point. And we were all over Brazil, so it's hard to remember where that was, but I'm pretty sure that was in Sao Paulo. So yeah, no, generally those things don't bother me. Courage is not something that I have to really work at. That just comes pretty much from. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story and an example because some of us have struggled more with having it. If I look at my life, I also, it's come natural in a lot of ways, but then some life hits and you just kind of flip and go, what? You do, you
yeah,
go, you don't even think about it being courageous. Looking back, you can see, yeah, I rolled with it, but courage was there. And so I guess
yeah.
it came natural for me in many ways. And you don't have too much problem with confidence, I don't think.
I've always been accused of being very arrogant, and I had a very close friend who heard somebody say that about me one time, and they said, It's not arrogance. It's just you're so confident that it can come across like arrogance." And it really helped me. That was 25 years ago, probably. Really helped me to understand myself better. It's like, yeah, people are going to interpret you as being arrogant, but stay humble and just be yourself. So,
Absolutely. And I agree. I remember hearing that being said about actually a speaker I listened to one time was accused of being arrogant, but they were just
mhm,
competent in what they knew and where they
mhm,
were and what they were doing. I
yeah,
believe you and I've done things together with workshops and things like that. And we like addressing the point of who are you versus what do you do.
mhm,
It's a little irritating when you first meet somebody and well, what do you do?
yeah.
I'd like you to, I know I'd really like you to talk about that because not only have you've done some social media with that content, it's very important that we look at who we are. And I'd like you to spend some time addressing that in the context of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was presented, and this wasn't that long ago, actually. I revisited this. I've been down that path several times, but uh, I was presented with a consultant I was working with the challenge of asking, I think it was five people, maybe it was supposed to be six, and I only did five. I don't remember. You were one of them. Um, to have them tell you who they see you to be, I think was the gist of it. I don't remember the exact words. Um, and there was no big surprises there in that. Pretty much what people said was pretty much who I feel I am. But um, none of that had to do anything with, being the front man, lead singer, lead guitar player in a rock band, or being the CEO of a company, or any of that stuff. It was more character traits and, the drivenness, the being willing to take on big challenges, don't see obstacles, being kind, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. And it was interesting. Nobody brought back any of the, well, you're this and you're that, and you do this and you do that, and because that's not who we are. That's just what we do. And when we confuse what we do with who we are, we don't know who we are, and that usually gets us in big trouble. So,
Absolutely. And been talking with another business associate about that very thing, that especially people, mostly people in business, well, then housewives and mothers get into that too, because a friend of mine, I don't have any kids, she has, but a few, and she was in a speaking training group, and I don't like to say brand names, but she was given a challenge on her second time there to write her first talk of Who Am I? And
mhm.
she couldn't talk about what she did. She couldn't say, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a blah, blah, blah. She said, she came to me and said, I don't know where to start. And it's truly a hard thing to do. I would
Yeah,
challenge anybody to try to describe who you are without saying what you do. And
yeah,
I've done it, but it's taken me years to try to stop talking about what I do. It is a
yeah,
challenge, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, we really view ourselves as human doings instead of human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was challenged with that, oh, just a few years back. After she said that, I started thinking about it, but then I got challenged with a coach I was working with, and she's like, no, don't make me do this. Don't make me do this.
Yeah,
Don't. However, being, you doing consulting and I do coaching and or all the things that we do, I'm sure we've got so many stories of people that they don't have a clue who they are.
yeah. No, it's totally true. Yes. Or worse, they've let other people tell them who they are. Um,
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, been there, done that. And it's not always pleasant, but we're raised, and I think we're raised in a culture that doesn't know how to identify the human being part of who we are. And
yeah,
yeah,
I agree with that. There was
yeah.
there was a thing that I used to do in one of my talks years back when I was traveling and teaching, and I would say that the world is full of self-centered, insane people, and we're the craziest of them all because we let other self-centered, insane people tell us who we are, and we believe them. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
that's really the world.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Now talking about the rest of the theme, connections.
Mhm.
You you have lived your life much like I have, with you rely on connections. And talk a little bit about your perspective on not just the business connections, but life connections. How you work with connections, how people find you, not the business stuff, I think. But what I want to
Yeah.
focus on is, how has making connections affected your life in any way you care to discuss?
Yeah, good, both good and bad. You get connected with wrong people, and that can be very damaging.
Mhm.
You get connected with good people, and that can be very beneficial. But it's in my natural personality. I'm a stay home, leave me alone, go away, get off my lawn kind of guy. I'm just as content and happy as to be home alone and go out and work in my shop on one of my classic cars and just leave me the hell alone. I just, I'm as the Irish say, I'm happy as Larry to do that. But I realize that we in anything we want to do in life, we can't do it in isolation. And I think to a large degree, the internet has made that worse. The internet has made it so that, I mean, here we are, we're having a meeting, right? We're doing this podcast. I'm sitting here alone in my place, and you're sitting there alone in your place. And yeah, we're friends, so we have a connection, but it's like um, the world has become more and more, especially over the last few years, of the work from home, no longer in the workplace office type stuff. We're more isolated than ever, and yet we should be more connected than ever. So I find that a very challenging thing to navigate,
Mm.
um, because it's easy to just sit behind a screen, whether it's your phone or your laptop or your desktop or your TV, and develop what I call two-dimensional connections with people, but never really develop a true three-dimensional connection. Um, so I think that's the great challenge in the world today is developing those three-dimensional connections.
I agree. And I was, I've been out in the business world before all this was available. And it's really nice to be able to connect with people virtually that you would never meet physically. And you may, we may never meet physically, but I may never be in the same room with other people they're on the other coast, they're in other countries. Although I do have
Right.
standing invitations to visit, but
No tickets.
yeah, I know. I'm going to go to Scotland one day, I have a feeling. But yeah, oh yeah, this gal. Anyway, but true, it's easier and harder. And it's easier to get business or to be nationwide, even worldwide with business. But it's
Yeah.
harder, like you said, there's so little one-on-one personal contact. And even ever since we went through the situation 5 years ago, I noticed, I mean, all the personal networking stopped. You couldn't see people, all this stuff happened. And it changed the dynamics. It changed all our
It
dynamics.
did. Yeah, I
Uh,
lost a lot of business associates, not so much customers at that point, but I lost a lot of business associates because we just no longer were meeting face to face. And I was, my stage name is Rebel, so that I didn't buy into most of that stuff. And I was meeting with people face to face long after we were told not to. And I'm like, oh, I'm good if you're good. I don't care. Just don't care about all of that stuff. And it's not that I didn't take everything that was happening seriously, but um, I still believe that face-to-face personal connection is important. And eventually people just stop doing that. And it's been hard to get those things going again. People, hey, let's have a Zoom meeting, and they're 10 miles down the road.
right.
No, I'm getting my butt in the car and I'm coming down there to see you. I'm not sitting here doing this. We're a country apart, of course. It's the only way we can do this. But
Yeah.
um, and I think in some ways people have gotten lazy and they've substituted this kind of connection for real connection with people. And they're willing to do the flat screen two-dimensional stuff like this, and they're missing out big time in the dynamics of it's not just what I see on the screen. It's there's a third dimension to communication that can only be felt when you're in a person's presence. If you're into that kind of thing, some people call it the person's chi, whatever. Um, you can't experience that through a webcam. You can't experience that over a phone call. So I think it's something that I'm hoping is going to come back more and more and
Yeah.
get back to real connection.
Yeah, I hope so too, because even going out is a challenge in some ways because people they want to meet. Now, I've got some clients that they're local and so we get together. We do. It's a lot of fun. When it comes to meetings and coaching, it's easier virtually. However, go out, meet for coffee and you know, yeah, I'm like you. I'm a homebody. And so I'm sure a lot of the world is okay, I'm gonna stay here in my little cocoon and I'm comfortable. I don't have to drive anywhere.
It's over 60% of the population isn't that way. So it's real easy to gravitate into that.
I hadn't heard any statistics on that. Yeah, yeah. I would love to meet so many people face to face. I really would. And it's
Well, when
interesting.
I go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just it's interesting because I've got friends all over the country and
When I,
getting
when I think back to what I did in that other life that I had, um, I was traveling all over the world, and I tried to put myself into meeting with those same people and what that dynamic would have been like. And like I was mentioning, being in Brazil, doing that virtually, it doesn't develop you as a person when you're traveling in a foreign country and you don't speak the language and they don't speak much of your language and you're getting in a cab and you have no way to communicate with the cabbie except something that wrote on a piece of paper. Here's where I'm going, and we get lost. And that's a true story. Um, and I've had that happen time and time and time again. And it's
yeah,
like there's more to it than just and I think about sitting with people in foreign countries and just the dynamic of trying to communicate face to face. And we can do that because it's not just the language, but it's the facial expressions and stuff we can't do this way, in a digital thing. So yeah, it's as much as I'm not a people person and I want to stay home and get off my lawn, by the same token, it's like if I'm going to do this or I'm going to get in the car and drive 3 hours to meet somebody, I'm getting in the car and I'm going because I just know that that kind of connection is there's no other way to have it except being in the same room, breathing the same air, sharing your diseases, I guess, in today's world.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I'd like to have you just talk about anything regarding your business, your band, anything that you'd like to address with, you don't even
Can you
have to
say
say
that again? I'm sorry, you cut out there for a
I
second.
did. Okay. Why don't you just just do a free for all talking about whatever you want to, as far as maybe business, band, personal. I just like you to have the floor for a few minutes before we wrap up the call.
Yeah, yeah. What would I want to talk about? That's a good question.
Oh, no
Yeah,
way,
it's
you
a
are lost for words.
yeah, no, well, no, it's not lost for words. It's that my transmission in my skull is stripping between about
Oh,
6 gears all at once. So
you know what? I know we haven't discussed your favorite thing to do besides music, and that's your cars. I want you to just talk about your cars and your YouTube channel because that is, I'm not into cars. I have a history of enjoying old cars, but you are passionate and you are into it. So tell our audience more about that.
okay, well, so if you go to YouTube, youtube.com/, my car shop, MYKARSSHOP. I have an automotive, I'll call it a restoration channel. It's a restoration, preservation, and more. I have I used to be an engineer in the auto industry here 3 lifetimes ago. And I started out my career right out of high school as an auto mechanic. So, automotive stuff goes, I don't have blood, I have oil in my veins. And what we do is I take on projects that nobody else would touch. You have to be insane. I'll give you an example. There's a project that I have been talking about for a few years. A guy said, "Hey, I've got this vehicle, and you're the only person I know that could actually do something with it." And it's been talk, and so I haven't taken it serious. So one day I happened to be home here, and I got a phone call, and he says, "Hey, it's on the trailer now. I'm on my way." Well, I know they had to log out like half of woods to get this thing out. That's how where it was. The trees were huge around it.
Wow.
So we got it here and pulled it off the trailer. It's a project that I'm actually going to do for my wife. And it had been here for a few days, and I had it out behind the barn, and she didn't see it. So I said, "Have you seen that project that we've talked about that I'm going to do for you is here?" Actually, she's going to do some of it. And no. So we went out there to look at it. She looked at this thing and she looked at me and she said, "You've got to be kidding me. I know what you can do, and I can't see how you could possibly fix this thing. It's bad. It's a 1939 Dodge pickup that's just, I'm probably going to replace almost everything on it."
Wow.
As I explained to her at the time, it's like the worse it is in some ways, the easier it is to fix. Because you're replacing big chunks. So you make great big progress, but it's literally rusted apart, and I'm going to have to do a bunch of work just to get the cab off of the chassis to work on. And that's the kind of stuff that I do. I'm a fabricator. I don't buy stuff, um, so I take pieces of metal and make things that almost perfectly duplicate what was there originally. I'm a welder, a machinist, or a mechanic. And so that's what we do on the channel is everything from upholstery to sheet metal work to fabrication to machine shop work to engines to whatever. We do it all. So yeah, that's my passion. If I could do anything in the world at this stage of my life and do nothing else, that's where I would be, is out in the barn yelling at people to get off my lawn. So
I don't blame you. I've seen enough of the end product and the you've done. I've seen your before and after on
mhm,
several things, and having been around old cars, I wasn't around someone who did what you do, but the end result of the work. I'm fascinated by some of the older cars, the simplicity,
mhm,
but the beauty of it. So
yeah.
beautiful, some of these. I would encourage all our listeners to jump on and subscribe to My Car Shop. That's going to be a link at the end too, and in the YouTube channel. It's
And the
fascinating.
message, sorry, I was going to say the message of the channel is people get I have 13 classic cars. And people look at that and say, oh my gosh, you must have so much money. No, I don't. I have almost nothing in any of these cars. And some of them are like top quality show cars, just a lot of time. And that's part of the thing that I'm trying to convey to this younger generation in particular is we're getting the idea that if we're going to restore a car, we have to swipe a credit card. I'm like, no, no, pennies on the, not just pennies on the dollar, but pennies on the thousands of dollars. If you're willing to put the work into it. So, and I think I feel like a voice of one crying in the wilderness, like with that, and come under a lot of fire. But as we're seeing now, shifting in the industry, parts are no longer available for things, and people all of a sudden they go, "Well, how am I going to fix this?" So
Yeah, so I could see where you could actually do you fabricate for other people when they come in and they need do people contact you for that?
I get contacted, and then they find out what I charge, and they go away pretty fast.
Oh, well,
It's extremely time consuming. So if you were to say to me, I need you to make a floor pan for this 1970 Dodge Challenger, which I've just finished making some for myself, um, you might as well buy those because for what you're going to have to pay me to make them, you could buy them for like 10% of what it would cost. But if you have a 1932 Peugeot and parts aren't available, I can make that, and you can't buy it. So that's the thing.
I think that's valuable insight too, because I recently had a conversation with someone, I think a client that, you know, really, really would benefit from having an intern or apprentice. And a lot of businesses, I don't know what's happened to apprenticeship. Where I live, the high school has a whole program on apprenticeship.
Mhm.
I think it's needs to come back, and it probably is making its way back, but that's the best way to learn. It's the best way to learn.
We to go back to CU Tech. Um, Now, I don't know if you were aware of this, but we were a training facility. We had programs with all of the local universities, and we did both bachelor's students and people working on their master's degree. I had a guy do his master's thesis with us, and that's how my business grew. Was we would take these students in, they would do a semester for college credit. They didn't get paid, and they would get experience and training and college credit for working with us. When the
Ah,
pandemic hit, the universities changed their programs to starting requiring these placement employers like us to pay these kids 20, 25 bucks an hour. Now, when you're a small business like me, I don't have those kind of pockets to pay these kids that kind of money. They're not going to make me any money. And I certainly don't have the kind of profits in my business to throw away that kind of money. So they really destroyed that part of my business when they did that. And I'm still trying to figure that out. So I lost my pool and we always charged a little bit less because people knew we're a training facility. Um,
yeah.
so it's just, what you're saying is true about the apprenticeships, and yet the educational systems that provided those opportunities for these kids have actually shot themselves in the foot. So I'm still trying to figure that one out. I've got some other things I'm working on right now. They're probably going to be a different way to go about that. I might get into that, but
Yeah.
absolutely, it's there's nothing like an apprenticeship or even an internship like that to really learn. The kids that I had, I say kids, they're all in their 20s and 30s. Um, Many of them have come back and said, they worked for me for 3 years because they went through the internship program and I ended up hiring them for a couple of years and then they moved on. And they said, we're so overqualified for our jobs. So everything we learned working with you has just, we know everything they throw at us, we know how to do. So that makes me feel real good, to know that. But you're right, we've got to get that back. It's
Yeah, I think it's going to be a vital thing to, not in every industry, but
mhm,
definitely I recommended it to some clients, and it's just it's a concept that's foreign to the younger kids in a lot of ways.
mhm.
But again, the high school here, I don't know about the college, but the high school, oh, they do have an apprenticeship program. I guess that's big here in our local
Yeah.
schooling, but I agree. I think they come along and they learn more than just a trade.
Mhm.
You get to teach them more than just a trade, and
Yeah.
these generations coming in are going to need to benefit from that. And hands on, I just think it'd be fun for you to have someone under your wing to, but I kind of am doing that. I'm starting to work with younger clients. I'm like, okay, that was not a good choice. Let's do
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But this is fascinating. You've got so many irons in the fire, and I'm always like, now where are you? Now what are you doing?
I'm often asking myself that.
Yeah, well, join the crowd. Well, to
Yeah.
our audience, we want to say thank you for watching, Mike. Thank you for being on my
Yep. Thanks
podcast
for
and
having me.
sharing part of your life here. And for all of our watchers, viewers, fans, whatever you qualify as, thank you for being here, watching, and also everything that Mike shared will have connections or all the links and information and such, and not just here, but on my website and YouTube. You'll be able to find it all and contact him as well as me, depending on what your need for service is. But thank you, Mike. I just want to give you my profound thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks. So it took a lot of coordinating to make it happen, but I'm glad it worked out. So I just had a major crisis right before um, we were scheduled to get on, and like fortunately, it's a huge, massive outage area wide. So I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it. So let's do this.
All right. Well, that's good. All right, guys.
Yep.
We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.
Right. Thanks.